The first thing Clara Reyes heard when she walked into Haneul Studio on a Thursday morning was a man begging. Not loudly. That was the part that stopped her cold in the doorway. It was quiet. Controlled. The kind of begging that comes from a person who knows that raising their voice will only make things worse. A senior manager named Director Yoon, a man Clara had watched command entire meetings with the confidence of someone who had never once been told no, was standing in the glass-walled conference room on the ground floor with his hands pressed flat on the table and his head slightly bowed, speaking in a low, urgent voice to the figure sitting across from him. Clara could not hear the words through the glass. She could hear the tone. Everyone in the lobby could. And everyone in the lobby had suddenly found something very important to look at that was not the conference room. The figure sitting across from Director Yoon had his back to the lobby. All Clara could see was a dark suit, broad shoulders, and the kind of stillness that did not belong to a relaxed person. It was the stillness of someone who had made a decision and was simply waiting for the other person to finish talking so the consequences could begin. Director Yoon stopped speaking. His hands came off the table. He straightened up and nodded once, the way a person nods when they have accepted something they cannot change. The figure in the chair said one thing. Clara could not hear it. But she watched Director Yoon's face do something complicated, relief and shame arriving at exactly the same time, and then the meeting was over. The figure stood. He turned. And Clara, who had been standing in the doorway of Haneul Studio for almost 40 seconds without moving, finally understood what Oliver had been trying to tell her. Kang Jiwoo was 29 years old and he looked like Seoul had built him specifically to run it. Tall, sharp-jawed, dressed in all black with the quiet confidence of a man who had never needed a room to go silent when he entered because it always did. His eyes swept the lobby once, the practiced, automatic scan of someone who catalogs everything and reacts to nothing, and for exactly half a second those eyes landed on Clara. She did not look away. She did not know why. Every other person in that lobby had already looked away. He held her gaze for that half second. Then he walked past her and out of the building like she was simply part of the architecture. Clara stood very still. Oliver appeared at her elbow from nowhere, grabbed her arm, and pulled her toward the elevator. "You were staring," Oliver whispered. "I was standing in the doorway." "You were staring, Clara." "Who is he?" Oliver jabbed the elevator button and looked at her with the expression of someone trying to explain gravity to a person who has just jumped off a building. "That," she said, "is Kang Jiwoo. He owns this building. He owns the 3 buildings next to it. He owns most of what happens in this part of Seoul and a significant portion of what happens in the rest of it. He is not a man you stare at in the lobby." I wasn't staring. I was just looking directly at him without blinking for an extended period of time. Clara opened her mouth. Closed it. "What did Director Yoon do?" she asked instead. Oliver glanced around the elevator. Lowered her voice to nearly nothing. "Nobody knows exactly. But Director Yoon has been moved to the Busan satellite office starting Monday." She paused. "He has 3 kids. He's been at this company for 11 years. Another pause. One conversation. That's all it took. The elevator doors opened. They stepped out. Clara looked back toward the lobby like she could still see him there. She could not. But she felt the shape of what she had just witnessed settling into her understanding of Seoul like a stone dropping into still water. Heavy. Permanent. Changing the surface of everything it touched. She had been in this city for exactly 16 days. She had a feeling the education was just getting started. If you are watching this for the first time, do yourself a favor and subscribe right now and hit that notification bell, because this is the kind of story that does not slow down from here. Stay with me. Let's go. The strange things started small. 3 days after the lobby incident, Clara arrived at her workstation to find her monitor had been upgraded overnight. Nobody had asked her if she wanted a new one. Nobody left a note. She mentioned it to the IT coordinator, who looked at her blankly and said the request had come from building management. Building management. The following week, a client she had been struggling with for days, a difficult, demanding creative director who had rejected 3 of her concepts without real explanation, sent an email at 8 in the morning that was so cooperative it read like a different person had written it. He approved everything. He added a personal compliment about her instincts. He CC'd her direct supervisor. Clara read the email 3 times. She pulled up the client's previous messages and compared the tone. It was not the same person. Not emotionally. Something had shifted between Tuesday evening and Wednesday morning, and whatever it was, it had nothing to do with her revised concept because she had not sent a revised concept yet. She thought about it for the rest of the day. Said nothing to anyone. On Friday she worked late. The office emptied out floor by floor the way offices do, the energy draining slowly until only the hum of the building's ventilation remained. Clara had her headphones around her neck, an energy drink she was not proud of, and 3 layouts spread across her screen that were almost right and not quite there yet. The cleaning crew came through at 9 and she waved them past without looking up. At 10:15 she heard footsteps in the corridor. Not the cleaning crew. Different weight. Different rhythm. She pulled one side of her headphones off and listened. The footsteps stopped outside the glass partition of her section. She turned around. Kang Jiwoo was standing in the corridor with his jacket folded over one arm and a container of food in his hand. He looked at her the way he had looked at her in the lobby, direct, measuring, giving nothing away. He crossed to her desk. Set the container down without a word. Turned to leave. Clara said, "You don't have to do that." He stopped. She watched his shoulder still. He turned back just enough for her to see his profile. "You've been here since 7, he said. His voice was low and even, the kind of voice that did not need volume to carry weight. "It's something." "I didn't ask." "I know you didn't." He looked at her directly then. Fully. The way he had in the lobby, like he was reading something. "It's something, Clara. Her name." He said her name like he had been saying it for years, like it was simply a word he had always known. She felt it in her sternum. He left before she could respond. She sat for a long moment looking at the door he'd walked through. Then she looked at the container of food. She opened it. Galbi-jjim. Still warm. Perfect. She ate every bite and told herself it meant nothing. But she kept thinking about the way he had said her name. She confronted him 6 days later. She found him on the rooftop garden of the building, a space she had not known existed until a door she passed every day had been left slightly open one evening, a thin strip of night sky visible through the gap. She had pushed it open and found him there. Jacket off. Sleeves rolled. Both hands resting on the railing as he looked out over Seoul spread below them like a circuit board lit up and breathing. He heard her come out. Did not turn around. "This floor is restricted," he said. The door was open. Doors can be open and still restricted. Clara stopped beside him at the railing and looked out at the city. It was enormous from up here. Beautiful and indifferent the way very large things always are. She let the silence sit for a moment because she had learned in the past 3 weeks that silence did not make Kang Jiwoo uncomfortable, and rushing to fill it only put her at a disadvantage. Then she said, "The monitor. The client. The food. Was that you?" A pause. Not the pause of someone caught off guard. The pause of someone deciding how much to give. "The client had a change of perspective," he said. "People don't have changes of perspective overnight without a reason. Sometimes they do." "Jiwoo." She turned to look at him. He was still looking at the city. The city lights caught the line of his jaw, the sharp angle of his cheekbone. He looked like someone who had been carved out of this place. Why? He was quiet long enough that she thought he might not answer. Then he turned. Looked at her. Full, direct, the same way he always did, like looking away was something he simply did not do when it mattered. Because you walked into this building, he said, and you were the only person in it who wasn't performing something. Everyone here wants something from me or wants something from each other. You walked in and you just walked. You laughed when something was funny. You pushed back when something was wrong. You said good morning to me in an elevator like I was a normal person and meant every word of it. Clara stared at him. I didn't know how to leave that alone, he said. The city hummed 30 floors below them. Clara turned back to the railing. Her heart was doing something she had given up pretending was nothing. You could have just said hello, she said quietly. I don't say hello. You just said it to me right now. Basically. Something happened at the corner of his mouth. Not quite a smile. Something more private than a smile. Something he was not sure he had permission to show yet. Go back inside, he said. It's cold. I'm from Atlanta. This is not cold. Clara. I'm going. She pushed off the railing. Walked toward the door. Stopped with her hand on the frame and turned back. He had already turned back to the city. Looking out at it the way she imagined he always did, like it was both the thing he had built and the thing that had built him. Thank you, she said. For the food. He said nothing. But she saw his shoulders shift slightly, like something in them released. She went inside. She stood in the elevator on the way down with her hand pressed flat against her sternum like she could slow her heartbeat down from the outside. She could not. And then Adrian Wolf arrived. He walked into Haneul Studio on a Monday morning like he had been expected, which technically he had. He was introduced in the company-wide email as a visiting creative consultant from London, partnering with a European luxury brand connected to the studio's latest campaign. He was 31, British, and looked like the kind of man who had been told his whole life that he was the most interesting person in any room and had believed every word of it. He was tall, well-dressed, and almost aggressively charming. He remembered names after hearing them once. He brought coffee for the team without being asked. He laughed at things that were actually funny rather than just laughing at everything, which was more disarming than it should have been. Oliver watched him for approximately 4 minutes on his first morning and then leaned over to Clara's desk and said, very quietly, "No. You don't even know him," Clara said. "I know the type. That kind of smooth is not natural. Natural people have at least one awkward moment per morning. He's had zero." "Zero, Clara. Something is being managed." Clara looked over at Adrian, who was at that moment making the team laugh with a story about a chaotic creative brief he'd once received from a client in Milan. He was good at it. Very good. He's probably just confident, Clara said. Confidence has edges, Oliver said. He has no edges. That's what worries me. Clara did not fully listen to this. She was distracted. She had found something 3 days earlier that she had not been able to stop thinking about, buried in an archive folder she'd accessed for a project, a cluster of files that did not belong in a design studio server. Financial transfers in amounts that made her breath catch. Location coordinates. A series of names she did not recognize cross-referenced with dates that corresponded to events she could not identify. All of it connected to Haneul Studio's parent company. All of it connected, in a document chain she had followed carefully and quietly over 2 evenings, back to Kang Jiwoo. She had not confronted him about it. She was smart enough to know she was standing at the edge of something that required more information before she opened her mouth. But it sat in her chest like a weight she carried from the moment she woke up. So when Adrian Wolf arrived and was warm and easy and normal, she let herself be a little relieved. One uncomplicated person in a building full of things she was only beginning to understand. That was her first mistake. Adrian began spending time near Clara the way water finds a gradient, gradually, naturally, as if it were simply where he ended up. He asked about her work with genuine seeming interest. He brought her coffee once and then twice, and then it became a thing that happened. He took her and Oliver to a rooftop restaurant in Gangnam on a Friday evening and ordered everything and made them both laugh so hard that Oliver visibly struggled with her own suspicion and almost lost. Almost. I still don't trust him, Oliver said on the cab ride home. You laughed for 2 hours, Clara said. Laughing and trusting are completely different things. I laugh at horror movies. Clara looked out the window at Seoul passing by. She thought about Jiwoo. She had not seen him on the rooftop again. But 3 days ago he had passed her in the corridor and slowed almost imperceptibly, just a fraction, and she had felt his eyes on the side of her face for the 3 seconds it took him to pass. She had not turned. She had kept walking. And then spent the rest of the afternoon very deliberately not thinking about it. She was doing a lot of things very deliberately these days. The listening device was the size of a shut button. Clara found it on a Tuesday evening while cleaning out her bag, the kind of thorough clean-out she only did when she was procrastinating something else. It was tucked into the inner lining seam. Black. Flat. Easy to miss. She had missed it for however long it had been there. She sat on her apartment floor and stared at it in her palm. Her mind ran the timeline fast and clean the way her mind always did when she was frightened and needed to be useful instead. Her bag. Who had access to her bag? When it could have been placed. The conversations she'd had near it in the past 2 weeks. What she had said in the office. What she had said in the studio. What she had said on the rooftop. The rooftop. She thought about the documents she had found on the server. The financial transfers. The coordinates. Kang Jiwoo's name woven through all of it. She thought about Adrian Wolf, who had no edges. Who remembered everything. Who had been near her bag at the Gangnam dinner when he'd offered to hold it while she looked at the view. Her hands were completely steady. Her eyes were not. She picked up her phone. She scrolled to the name she had saved simply as K, because she had told herself when she saved it that it was professional, that it was just in case, that it meant nothing, and she pressed call. He picked up on the first ring. There's something in my bag, she said. A device. Small. Black. 3 seconds of silence. The kind of silence that is not empty, the kind that is full of someone making several decisions very quickly. Don't move it, he said. I'm coming. He was there in 18 minutes. She timed it without meaning to. He knocked twice, she opened the door, and the look on his face when he stepped inside was the most frightening thing she had seen in Seoul because it was not the cold, controlled expression she knew. Something underneath it had cracked open. Not wide. Just enough. He crossed to where she was sitting on the couch. Looked at the device in her palm. His jaw went tight. He took it carefully, examined it, set it on the table. How long have you had this bag? He asked. Since the Gangnam dinner. Something moved through his eyes. Gone immediately, but she caught it. Tell me everything about that evening. Everyone who was near your bag. Every moment you put it down. She told him. All of it. Clear and sequential the way she always thought. He listened without interrupting once, which was more than most people managed. When she finished he was quiet for a moment. Then, Adrian Wolf is not a consultant. She had known, somewhere under everything, that this was coming. She had known it the moment she found the device. But hearing it said aloud landed differently. Who is he? He runs an organization out of London that has been trying to access my operation in Seoul for over a year. Money didn't work. Threats didn't work. He paused. So he found a different way in. Clara looked at him. Me? You? He used me. Yes. She sat with that. The full weight of it. The coffee. The restaurant. The easy laughter and the remembered names. All of it architecture. All of it designed. She had been a door he needed to open, and he had simply been very patient about finding the right key. Something cold moved through her chest, and then something hotter moved through after it. "What does he want from you?" she asked. Jiwoo looked at her. He pulled his jacket off and sat down across from her, and for the first time in all the weeks she had known him, he looked like a man who was about to put something heavy down that he had been carrying for a very long time. He told her everything. The organization. What it was. What it controlled. How it had been built and what it cost to maintain it. What Seoul owed to it and what it owed to Seoul. He spoke for a long time, and she listened to all of it without flinching once, which he would remember later as the moment he understood something about her that he had only suspected before. When he finished, she looked at him steadily and said, "You should have just told me to stay away from him. I didn't want you afraid of me." Jiwoo. She leaned forward slightly. "I found those files on the server 3 weeks ago." He went very still. "What files?" "The transfers. The coordinates. The cross-reference names." She held his gaze. "I've known something was underneath this building for 3 weeks. I didn't run. I didn't call anyone. I just waited to understand it better." She paused. "I am not afraid of you." He stared at her. Not the measuring, cataloging look she knew. Something raw. Something that did not have a name yet. "Why didn't you say something?" he asked. His voice was quiet. Different. "Because it wasn't my place yet," she said simply. "And I wanted to understand before I spoke." She sat back. "What are you going to do about Adrian?" His eyes shifted. The raw thing was still there, but the steel came back over it, the way ice forms over moving water, covering it without stopping it. "Handle it," he said. "Okay." She stood up. Walked to the window. Looked out at Seoul, 10 million people, all of them living their version of this city, none of them knowing what held the whole thing together. "Then go handle it." She looked back at him. "And come back." He stood. He picked up his jacket. He looked at her across the room the way he had looked at her on the rooftop, like she was the only fixed point in a city that was always moving. "Lock the door after me," he said. "Obviously." "Clara." "I said obviously, Jiwoo. Go." He left. She locked the door. She pressed her back against it and stood in her apartment in the dark and breathed. She did not sleep. She sat by the window and watched Seoul until the sky started changing color at the edges, that slow gray bleeding that happens before dawn, before the city has remembered to be loud again. She drank 2 cups of tea. She thought about Atlanta and her mother and the suitcase she had packed 11 weeks ago with a very specific kind of bravery that looks like stubbornness from the outside. She thought about a glass-walled conference room and a man with his hands flat on a table and his head slightly bowed. She thought about a container of galbi-jjim still warm. About a rooftop 30 floors above Seoul. About the way her name sounded in a voice that did not need volume to carry weight. She heard the knock at 4:57 in the morning. 2 knocks. The same as always. She opened the door. Jiwoo stood in the hallway looking like a man who had just finished something enormous and was still deciding what to do with his hands now that it was over. His jacket was gone. His sleeves were rolled. There was a cut along his left jaw that had been cleaned but not dressed. She stepped back. He came in. She closed the door. He sat on the couch. She sat across from him. The city outside the window was just beginning to breathe again. "It's done," she asked. "It's done. Adrian is in custody. His operation in Seoul is finished." He rested his forearms on his knees and looked at the floor for a moment. Then at her. He'll stand trial. He'll have a long time to think about his decisions. Good, she said. Silence. But it was the kind of silence that had texture now, the kind that had been earned. I had Park Juno transferred to Busan, he said. She blinked. What? 3 weeks after you started. He made you laugh in the lobby. You touched his arm. He said it simply. Flatly. Like he was reading from a report. I had him transferred to Busan the same evening. Clara stared at him. Jiwoo. That man. Has been promoted twice since his transfer. His salary has increased by 40%. His children are in a better school. That is completely beside the point. I know. You cannot just move people around because. I know. Because I smiled at them. Clara. He looked at her. Just looked at her. I know. I am aware that I am not a normal person. I am aware that the way I do things is significant. I am not going to pretend otherwise with you. A pause. The raw thing was back under the steel. She could see it clearly now, the same way you can see fire through glass. I just need you to know that I am aware of it. She looked at him for a long moment. You're impossible, she said. Yes. Completely impossible. Yes. I'm still not going to stop smiling at people, Jiwoo. That's just my face. Something happened at the corner of his mouth. The same thing that had happened on the rooftop, that private almost smile that was more his than anything loud could ever be. I know, he said quietly. I'll have to learn to live with that. She reached over and put her hand over his. Just that. Just her hand on his, warm and steady, the way she did everything, directly, without performing it. He looked down at it. Then up at her. And something in his face, in the set of his jaw and the line of his shoulders and the place behind his eyes where he kept everything, all of it went quiet. Just for her. Just in that moment before Seoul woke up completely and remembered to be loud. Good morning, she said softly. Almost a joke. Not quite. He looked at her. Good morning, Clara. She walked into Haneul Studio at 8:43 that morning looking exactly like a woman who had not slept and did not care even a little. Her curls were down and glossy and her hazel eyes were bright and she had the expression of someone whose internal landscape had shifted overnight into something larger and more interesting than it had been before. Oliver was waiting at the elevator with coffee and the face of a woman who had also not slept but for completely different reasons. I have heard, Oliver said, handing her the cup, things. Good morning, Oliver. Do not good morning me. Clara. There are rumors circulating through this building at a speed that suggests they are not entirely rumors and I need you to tell me everything right now. The elevator opened. Kang Jiwoo stepped out. The lobby went the way it always did when he arrived, that collective adjustment, that rearranging of air and attention. He moved through it the way he always did, without acknowledging it, already looking ahead. He passed Clara. He slowed. Just slightly. The way he always did now, the fraction that only she measured. And without stopping, without looking at anyone else, without changing the pace or the expression that kept the whole building at a respectful distance, he said it low and even and only to her. Good morning. He kept walking. The lobby kept breathing. And Clara Reyes stood very still with her coffee in her hand and her glossy curls catching the morning light coming through the building's glass front, and she pressed her lips together, and she lost the fight against the smile completely and immediately. Oliver grabbed her arm with both hands and made a sound that was not a word. Oliver. Do not act like that was normal. That was not normal. Clara Reyes, I have worked in this building for 2 years and I have never once heard that man say good morning to a single living person and you need to tell me everything right now, I am not joking. Let's go upstairs, Clara said. We are going upstairs and you are going to tell me every single thing that has happened. Every single thing, Clara agreed. She was still smiling when the elevator doors closed. If you made it to the end of this story, you already know what to do. Like this video, drop a comment telling me whose side you are on, and subscribe if you have not already because there is so much more where this came from. Share this with someone who needs a good story today. I will see you in the next one.